Hi, everybody. It is Wellness Wednesday, and I am going to give you a secret about relationships that most people are not talking about, okay? So, it's Wellness Wednesday, and it's February. It's a month of Valentine's Day. Love is in the air, right? Love's always in the air at our house. Thank the Lord. But for real though, so I'm going to talk about some things that are very beneficial to relationships because as Wellness Wednesday, it's not always about your health as a whole of your body, but more so of even your mental health, right? So we're going to talk about timeouts. And when I say timeouts, I'm not talking about your kids. I'm not meaning your kid timeouts. That's a whole nother conversation we can have at a later date, okay? If you're joining in live with me, if you will drop me a 1 in the comments, that would be wonderful. If you're catching this after I'm off of stream, if you could drop a 2, I would greatly appreciate it. At any time in this stream, if you feel like you have some value that you've taken away from it, just put value in the comments. It just lets me know what you guys like and what you want to hear and which topics I can build more on. So, we're going to talk about timeouts. Do you feel like you have ever had people in your life and it doesn't matter what conversation you're having with them, it always ends up in some sort of a heated argument? I know I have situations like that. I feel like there's always somebody or something in your life that tends to set you off. Okay, so we're going to talk about timeouts and how that can help you in those situations and how you can actually grow as a person in that type of situation. So it's just a classic type of an anger management tool that we used in the classrooms. But it doesn't necessarily have to be for anger. It can be for any type of an emotion that's a high emotion that causes you to have a communication barrier. So I know it sounds super simple and it can be simple, but timeouts are going to take time for you're going to have to practice it and you have to be intentional with it. It's definitely an intentional skill. And if you don't practice it, then trying to implement it within the moment just isn't going to work. It's just going to cause even more of a meltdown. It's going to cause even more emotions. So it's something you have to really think about how you can do it and when you can utilize it and the best way to utilize it. So I'm going to give you some tips on that and some tricks. And I'm also going to explain to you why it's so important. So, pretty much what you do is you are taking yourself out of a triggered situation so you have time to regain control and get your emotions back in order. So, it doesn't mean that you're blowing off the conversation, it doesn't mean you're blowing off the discussion or anything like that. It's just just a healthy alternative to de escalate in the situation before it gets completely out of control. Because if you've ever been in an argument or if you've ever been in a situation that causes your emotions to rise, which I know pretty much anybody that's listening to this has been in that type of a situation. If you haven't, then you're like superhuman and I need to talk to you because that's cool. But everybody's been in situations that's caused your emotions to just feel like they're completely out of control. And then whenever you leave that situation, the communication's been impacted. It's hard to communicate what you're trying to say and what the exact point is. Most of the time in that type of situation, you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know why we're having this topic. Like, what is the purpose of this topic, right? Because your emotions have completely taken over. Your words get twisted. You say things you don't mean to say. And so being able to remove yourself from a moment to regain your thoughts allows your brain to get back in control and you're able to communicate in a more meaningful and productive manner versus saying things that majority of the time you're going to end up regretting after it's all said and done. Because when your emotions are high, whether it's anger, sadness, whatever the emotion is, when your emotions are high, you typically are going to say things that are hurtful that you really don't mean. It's just your emotions taking over. If you've ever watched that movie, the Disney movie, I can't even remember the name of it. If you've ever watched that, then you can kind of see, anger and how anger is always just doing things and not really meaning to do it when it happens. So, a timeout doesn't have to be necessarily a formal gesture. It's not something where you say, okay, beep, timeout, I'm out of here, I gotta go. It can be informal. It can simply just be you saying, you know what, I got to end this conversation. I need a second to regain my thoughts and I need a moment before I come back to having this conversation with you. So, even if you're sitting at work and you get a text message and it sets you off, right? You're sitting there and you read it and you're like, "Oh crud." and now you're texting back and you're just like angry, mad woman texting back, right? Mad man texting back. And you can tell your words are starting to get harsh. So instead of hitting that send button, just put your phone down, take a minute and think about that, what you're fixing to say. If you're fixing to send this message and it's going to hurt the situation even more, do you think it's smart to send it? No, right? Take a second, take a few breaths, calm down, listen to something that's going to change your mood. Whatever it is makes your mood, change back to being in a better, calm state of mind. And then also think about what is it in that particular message or in that particular moment that's setting you off? Like, what's made you just go off the chart? Okay? And is it really worth blowing up over? Because the possibility of turning that hard situation even like into a worse situation is fixing to happen if you send that message, right? So I'm going to give you a couple steps to help you understand and utilize a timeout, but more in a formal manner. So a lot of times the informal manner can be used if it's with emails, if it's with a phone call, if it's when you're not face to face. But when you're when you're in a face to face situation and your emotions are escalated and you're upset, then you can have a plan in place that helps you take a timeout without causing even more problems. So identify ways that are productive timeouts for you and your personality. So whatever your personality is, maybe you need to go outside, maybe you just need a moment in a different room, listening to some soft music, whatever it is for your personality that helps you, then you have to identify that. It all comes within. It's like looking at your inner emotions and really digging deep as to who you are and what sets you off. Okay? So if you're at home and say you're in a heated argument with your spouse, whoever you're in a relationship with, and even your children, like I even wanted to make it a point that these are very beneficial with your kids, especially if you have teenagers, right? Because we know that teenagers pull out the best of our emotions with their mouths, right? So making sure you know what it is that sets you off, okay? And then having somewhere else to go. Determine where you can go to have that time to yourself. If it means you have to walk outside. I know for Colton and myself, if Colton and I are having a conversation and we cannot seem to come to a point where we are understanding each other, where we have hit that level of miscommunication and we're not understanding each other, it is very typical for him to just walk outside the door. He walks outside, he'll walk to the end of our pasture, and then he'll come back. But I know as his wife, that's what he needs. He needs a moment to go outside, to just kind of have a second to himself to think about things. And I just let him be. And then he comes back, and then we are like always able to come back to that level of communication where we're understanding each other. Because sometimes the smallest word, like this one word, can literally take a conversation from being here to here and it being completely out of control. That's just humans. I mean, there's trigger words that we have built in us because of our past or because of different things in life that tend to set us off, and we don't even mean for it to. Like, that's just the way our body's made. That's the way our brain's made. We don't always mean for things to just set us off, but one word can do that, right? And so once you have that place determined, and you have it set, then you got to do so, like, you want to make sure that's in a physical manner. So timeouts are going to be made for physical. Like, it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to sit here on the couch and I'm going to sit over here and I'm just going to boil in my thoughts while you sit at the end of the couch and you boil in your thoughts. That's not a timeout. That's just taking a break from the conversation and still coming back to it. Timeouts mean you actually take yourself away from the situation and you give yourself a moment to reflect on what's going on and get back in control. Now, for the record, it is good to avoid timeouts that involve alcohol and driving. So when your emotions are high and you decide that you're going to go have alcohol, nothing good comes out of that. And I know people are like, well, that just makes me feel better. Makes you feel better in the moment. And some of you may not like what I have to say about that. And if you do, I'm sorry. But alcohol does not make it better. Alcohol escalates it. Alcohol takes your emotions and just pushes them even further over the side of that ship. And now you come back in a whole nother state. And now it's just going to get worse. So, and then driving, of course, driving with a clouded mind and going through things and being frustrated and being mad when you're driving can also cause an accident. So don't drink and don't drive, and definitely don't drink and drive. Okay, so just for the record, but you got to be intentional. So my second tip is being intentional, making sure that, especially if it's with your home life, with your kids, with your relationship, that they are aware that you are going to be utilizing timeouts. And so you communicate that, and you communicate it before you need it. So in the classroom with our kids, I didn't have them say, "Oh, you got to go take a timeout" in the moment. We practice timeouts beforehand. So if I had a student that was quick to escalate, I would practice that with them beforehand. And we had a plan in place before it happened. And so making sure that you're communicating that you're going to be using this strategy within the moment is going to equal a better outcome for you in the long run. If you don't communicate it, imagine if you're at work and you're having a conversation with an employee or with your boss, and you just turn around and walk off. You're probably going to get fired if you're the employee, because now it looks like you're being insubordinate, right? So just make sure that you're communicating with those around you that I'm going to start using timeouts for my communication purposes and my relationship purposes, and this is what it might look like. And so if you happen to be in that situation and you say, I got to take a second, and you walk away, now you're not going to get fired. Or now you're not going to be, your employee's not going to be like, "Wow, they just blew me off." Whatever the situation is, your spouse isn't going to be thinking that you just are walking out on them, right? So it just is going to help you, and better like strengthening that communication that you're doing this. So you can even have a phrase. You could even have something that you say and you recite it, say it over and over again, so you know when you need to say it. You could say, "You know what? I can feel myself getting a little bit upset right now as we're talking, and I really want to avoid situations that are going to result in bigger consequences. I'm going to take a second to regain control." And then step away. Okay? And then you can even go to, the extreme of saying, "Can we come back to this in about 30 minutes or an hour?" And if you utilize the time frame, now you have that agreement with each other that we aren't just avoiding this situation. We're going to go ahead and come to a resolution. We're going to come up to an agreement, or we're going to go back to the conversation and finish it, but we're not going to do it right now. We're going to do it in an hour. So then that way both of you are understanding that we're not done talking about it. We're just going to come back with a different state of mind and follow up from where we're at. And like I mentioned, use it with your kids, especially if you have kids that are in those ages of like 10 to 8, those preteen, teen years. Utilize it with your kids, because they're going through stuff too, and they don't always know how to communicate with you. That's the thing, is as parents, we want to just tell them how to do, but sometimes they don't understand that. They don't understand why we're telling them how to do it like this or how to do it like that. And so you want to make sure that you communicate with your kids. And sometimes your kids don't know how to express their emotions, and that's totally fine. Like, children don't understand it. Children have these little bitty bodies, and they have all these emotions going through them, especially when they're going through puberty. They have all these crazy emotions going on, and they don't know how to express what's going on in their body. And so they have to take the time to understand that. And so teaching them how to use a timeout can be a healthy way for your relationship with them. Like, we have a daughter, right? She's 12, fixing to be 13. Holy moly. But she's fixing to be 13, and there's times she shuts down. And so letting her know that, hey, and I've even had that conversation with her. "You know what, Kyra? I understand that I'm not getting through to you right now. We're having some issue. I need you to go to your room, and I need you to get yourself back together. I need you to work on the way you're coming across in your attitude, and then we're going to come back and have this conversation again." And that helps them learn that it's okay to have those emotions, but it's not okay to act the way they're acting. Because they have to know that. Because if you don't teach that to them as a child, then they go into the work field, and then that's what you get, right? So you want to make sure that you utilize it with your kids too. And then the next tip is monitoring your level of emotion. So in order for this to work for you, you have to be in touch with your emotions, and you have to know that, okay, I'm fixing to be out of control. I'm fixing to lose it. I'm about to blow my top, right? So the point of this strategy is to catch yourself before you blow up off the charts. All right. Monitoring your level of emotion and understanding that when you have control and when you're not in control. and being able to step out of the situation when you're fixing to lose control. So once you can remove yourself, regain control, you're going to be surprised at how much you can accomplish. And every time you do this, you're really going to be surprised at how much easier it becomes for you. At first, it's going to be hard because at first you're going to blow up. You're going to flip the switch, you're going to lose control, and that happens. But when you are aware of what you're doing and you're aware of your emotions and you can feel yourself, like if they say one more word to me, oh my gosh, I'm fixing to lose it, right? Everybody has that moment like, oh, just please pop off to me one more time. And if they, you hit that moment, but instead of letting them pop off to you one more time, you tell yourself, I got to remove myself from the situation. It starts to become easier. So just monitoring those levels and being able to understand when and where, like when and what's going to set you off. And let me say this too, it may be different for different people because I know myself. Some people I can sit there and they can just do this and this and this and this and this and it doesn't even phase me. But sometimes there's other people in that's been in my life and literally one time of them going or to me, I'm done. I'm over, right? So making sure you monitor and you keep up with those emotions, especially given the circumstances of who we're dealing with. Because you can handle a lot from some people, you cannot handle as much from other people. So making sure that you're aware of that in every situation of your life. And then taking the time out. So the tips on taking the time out. As I stated, be intentional with it. You have to teach yourself, you have to practice it, you have to be aware of it, you have to do it intentionally. Okay? During the timeout, it's important for you to find a way to regain control. In the timeout, you're not just going away from the situation and being done with it and saying, you know what, forget it, I'm not even thinking about it anymore. You are taking that specific time to refocus in on what the problem is. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying like don't dwell on it. Don't make yourself even madder. Don't make yourself even sadder. Whatever this is, whatever your emotion is, don't go in there and just dwell on it and build it up and everything. The purpose is for you to maintain that control. So you want to reflect on what's going on, even pinpoint down to what was it that set you off. Like, I was good up until they said, I don't like your brown hair. Whatever it was that pushed you over the edge. Figure out what was that poke? What poke made it come to the end, right? And so when you do that, then you can analyze the situation and figure out exactly why am I so upset right now? And what do I need to do to go back and maybe listen and be a little bit better of an active listener and figure out how we can communicate whatever it is we're going through. Take a moment to really think of the situation as a whole, and is that it, like, is the issue, the words maybe that were exchanged that trigger you? Just really look at it, but utilize that timeout to make sure you are going to go back into that conversation productive, because like I said, you're not getting yourself out of the situation, you're not getting out of the argument or the heated conversation. You still have to face it, but figure out what it is that's going to allow you to go back in it with a better mindset and a better open, like, listening mind frame, so you can address it and just be done with it, solve whatever the problem is. And then when you return, so this is kind of piggybacking on that. So if you decide that there's a specific time frame, say it's between you and your husband, hey, in 30 minutes we're going to come back to this. During that time frame, when you return to it, if you allow yourself to get built up again and worked up again, you may have to take another time out. Just depends on what it's about, right? If you go back to the situation with a different approach and you have a better attitude and everything works out, that's great. But maybe in that 30 minutes or to an hour, you still aren't able, you still feel like you're raging, or you still feel like you're going to lose it. So then you just simply say, you know what, I think I need a little bit more time. And if you need a little bit more time, take more time to, get in control, because you want to make sure that you're not just going back into it and still having to take a time out over and over and over again. That's silly. That's not productive, right? The whole point of this is to be productive in your communication. So if you feel that you've calmed down considerably, then go ahead, re-engage in it, and then have a problem-solving discussion. If you're still upset, then come back to it in a little bit. Okay? So just remember that When emotions are high, communication's not productive. I mean, even whenever we're happy, like Kyra comes home from school and she is so excited, but she talks 90 miles an hour and I have no idea what she's saying. And I'm like, hold on, sister, slow down and explain that to me where I can understand you. When your emotions are not level, it is hard for you to communicate. Um, and then just, neither one of you is going to be benefiting if you continue to try to have conversations and you're both upset. And then the next thing is timeout's going to really allow you to get in touch with those inner emotions and understand why you react in the manner that you do. And utilizing this strategy not only helps you grow in your communication, but you'll be surprised at how like you start to grow as an individual. You'll start seeing that things that used to really set you off don't bother you as much anymore. But it's because you're finally like taking time to address that emotion, and you're really like pinpointing and I guess dissecting is the word I was looking for. You're dissecting what it is that's really setting you off and really making your emotions do the things you do. So then in like your overall life, you start noticing that, hey, when so and so gave me that stank eye, it didn't bother me so bad this time, because you're finally like drawn in on those inner emotions. So communication is so important to relationships, whether it's your marriage, work, friendships, or like I said, even your children. So be proactive in realizing that when you've lost control and whenever you're ready to go back and maintain control and gain it back. So that's my secret for you today, guys. It's Wellness Wednesday. I'm Kaylee, the teacher of finances. I hope that you took some value from this. I hope that maybe it'll help you, and maybe you don't put it in effect immediately, but you may have a moment where you're like, hey, Kaylee talked about timeout. Maybe I need to try that. I hope that you are utilizing it and you like it. If you took any value from it, drop value in the comments. I would appreciate it. Or like it, share it, follow my stuff, whatever you want to do. I appreciate it all. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. I will see you guys tomorrow for Thoughtful Thursdays. Thankful Thursday. Sorry, Thoughtful's Tuesday. Thankful Thursday. See you guys tomorrow.